One of my favorite quotes that sets the tone for this conversation that we're about to have, and at the same time has helped me personally balance my life, is work for this world as if you will live forever, and work for the hereafter as if you will die tomorrow. This quote is by Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And the conversation that we're going to have today is our confusion around success. What's the real meaning behind what we're doing every day? And I say that it dictates the conversation that we're going to have today, because the conversation that I'm going to be having with you is, I'm going to be thinking out loud about why we always feel lost chasing success, why we feel like we're never doing enough, why do we put so much pressure on ourselves. And this is just going to be me talking about what I've personally gone through in relation to this subject, and what I've been seeing from the people around me, and kind of relating it back to the conversations that I've had on this show. Thank you for taking the time and giving this podcast a listen. I wanted to remind you that the only way this podcast grows is with your support and your help. And the free and easy way to do that is to subscribe to the podcast, like this video, share it with your friends, and let me know what you think in the comments. With that being said, let's get the show started.
Welcome aboard Middle East Airlines.
والمتوجهة إلى
طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب
مدينة القدس العربية.
So I'm going to be very honest with you. I used to obsess over success, wanting to make it. I used to compare myself a lot to other people and what they're doing. When I was 22 years old, I was looking at other 30-year-olds and maybe very successful 27-year-olds and 40-year-olds, and I'll be like, how far am I from that? Could I possibly change my life within the next 5 years so I can be as successful as this person or that person? And it used to consume a lot of my mental energy. And I'll give you a small example, and you can apply it to every metric of your life, because that's what I was doing. I started photography, and I take pictures. And obviously, when you first start photography, the pictures that you're going to take aren't that nice. But the only thing that I would be looking at is pictures of people who have been doing it for decades. And I would be like, these people are so ahead of me that it feels almost impossible to reach their level. And it's a difficult pill to swallow, because when you go into something, you want to be the best. You want to stand out. And when you see all these people standing out in the same field that you are, because I look at it as like a stadium. You walk into the stadium and everyone in the stadium is playing the same game. It doesn't matter. That's how it was in my head. I'm not saying that this is correct, but in my head, I would think that we're in the stadium and everyone's playing the same game. I just started playing and everyone else is way ahead of me. So how in the world am I going to win this tournament? Or how am I going to win this game? I had a really hard time comparing my progress to what I was a few months back or a few years back. I would always, and especially at that time, I had just moved to America, so I had progressed in my life, but because I was so focused on, for example, just for the sake of the example, the photography, I would always be like, I'm in a really bad position right now. And in those moments where I did hit those highs, I still felt like I wasn't doing enough. Like if I reached a certain milestone at work or wherever, that would be nice for a specific amount of time. But then after that, the excitement kind of dwindles down, and then you're at base level again. And not until recently did I find the term, the hedonic treadmill. The definition of it is when people return to their baseline of happiness, no matter what the progress or the success or the achievement that they did, they always come back to the baseline level of happiness. And this goes for positive experiences and also negative ones. And you could take that in a positive aspect where you say, okay, if you're on the hedonic treadmill, that means you're always striving for more and you're always striving. But you can also take that in a negative aspect, and it's like you'll never be satisfied with anything that you do in your life, because it doesn't matter what type of success you amount to, you're always going to go back to the baseline level of happiness. A lot of us feel burnt out by that. You're always chasing, you're always thriving for more, you're always trying to improve. But that that doesn't matter if your psychological state is always the same. So it kind of doesn't matter what's changing on the outside as long as the inside is still feeling the same. There's actually a study in 2023 that showed that 59% of Gen Z is always burnt out. And that raises a couple questions. Like, you're talking about almost 60% of an entire generation feels burnt out most of the time. That doesn't sound normal to me. That doesn't sound like something we should be striving for. And you can't but ask the question, why is this happening to us? And I'm going to break down a few things that should put it into perspective. If you just log into Instagram right now and you see the amount of people that post about their success, that post about their amazing daily routines, and people posting about how happily married they are and what trips they're going to, these things unconsciously, even if you're just taking a small glimpse at it, it's subconsciously feeding into this idea that this is how your life is supposed to be, and why isn't it like that? And the thing is, 99% of our lives are not like that. Even the people that are posting about this stuff, their lives are not like that. And we say these things and we understand them, but in the moment they consume us, and you think, but what if it is actually like that? And what if I am this behind? And now we go back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Now you're comparing yourself again to all these people, that you're comparing yourself to an idea that doesn't exist in the way that you think it does. You're approaching life as someone who is behind, but in reality, you're at the same level as everybody else. And I'm not saying this to say that no one's successful. There's a lot of successful people out there, but it's ironic enough that the successful people usually don't post that much about their success. And the worlds that we live in, it almost seems like everyone's successful. And this was mentioned on this past Monday's episode with Khalil. It feels like everyone is making money except you. It feels like everyone's successful and happy except you. But what these algorithms are doing is they're convincing you that you're behind. And let's take this example of like a basketball game. If there's a 30 or 40 point difference in the score in the fourth quarter, most teams usually rest their best players and they stop chasing winning the game. They just accept the loss because the difference is so high, and they think that the effort that they're going to exert in that period of time is not worth it. And kind of bring that example back to you. If your perception is that you're so far behind in this competition of life, and there's no way that the efforts that you're going to put in are going to make you as happy or as successful, the only thing that'll do is make you sit back and feel like there's no point in playing the game that everyone else is playing. Why would you if you're never ever going to get to the finish line? That's what we think. Another part of the problem is we only value success through status and money and fame. We don't value success as in the relationships that you have. If you have a very good group of friends, you don't value that as success, although that's very hard to find. Most people don't have good friends. Or if you have a very good partner and you have very good family, you don't see that as success because it just feels like this stuff should come natural. But in reality, it's not. That is also success. That is an aspect of life that even if these people are as successful as they are, they might not have that. And we all fall in this trap sometimes. You know, a lot of us have the best mothers and the best fathers and the best relationships and the best siblings, but we don't look at that as something worthwhile. It just seems natural because you've gotten used to it. Again, you're back to that baseline level of happiness at all times, and you don't see that as this is something that puts me at an advantage in life. You don't look at your relationships like that. You only look at the monetary success, the money success, as what dictates whether you're on the right track or not. But keeping a very good relationship with your mother or father or siblings, or having a very happy marriage and a partner that supports you. Like these things also take a lot of effort and a lot of time. And you should look at that as, oh, I am successful in these parts. And it's kind of changing what the meaning of success is. Why I struggled with that part exactly on a personal level is that if I think that these relationships are good and I should look at that as success, that's not going to change anything in my life. You know, my life is still the same. I'm still at the same status. I'm still in the same tax bracket. So why does it matter? Why it matters is I found out that when you think that, oh, I do have a lot of success in my life, like these things are successful aspects of my life, you stop looking at yourself from the lens of I'm behind. It's no, actually I'm very ahead in my relationships, and I do a very good job, and I maintain all these great relationships with my friends and my siblings and my wife and my parents. And now I just have to focus on my career, for example. You know, it changes the way you think about yourself. And like everything I talked about so far in all the studies, it has to do with how you perceive things. And it's always a struggle to think that perceiving things differently changes the way you go about your life. But it's weird because it really does. Like even Harvard has this 80-year-old study that the number one predictor for happiness, for long-term happiness in your life is not money, it's your relationships. It's how strong your relationships are and how close your relationships are. I just explained that if you just focus on that, and if you just recognize that this aspect of your life is successful because your relationships are so good, it kind of shifts the mentality to, no, who said that I'm not in this competition? Who said that I'm down 40 points in the fourth quarter? I'm actually right there with them. You know, I have a shot at winning. It changes, and now you don't rest your starters. Now you're actually in the game. You check back in the game. Now it's time to play. That's what I mean when I say the psychology of success matters. And then happiness, also when it comes to money, has a plateau. And studies show that this plateau is at $75,000 a year. This is if you live in America. So think with me. Let's say that, and what this means is the $75,000 happiness plateau. It technically means that if you're making over $75,000 a year, your level of happiness does not increase as much as you think it is. It's actually all the same. And maybe the number is not as accurate. Like this is an older study. And obviously, maybe these days, $75,000, I think that number probably has gone up a little bit. But the point is that there's a certain amount of money that isn't millions and millions and millions of dollars that we think it is. There's a very relatable amount of money that after it, your happiness actually doesn't go up a lot. And you have this other study where your relationships is what dictates your happiness. So if you're at this very relatable amount and your relationships are very, very good, you're actually in the probably top 1% of success in the world. If you deem success to be your internal happiness, your being content internally, being satisfied with your life at an internal level. And I kind of want to tie it back to some of the conversations that I've had on this show. When I've mentioned before that I talk to them a lot off camera. And just during the conversation on camera and off camera, I always try to understand at what stage they were in their life when they were my age, which is at this point 26. I always want to understand how were they at 26? What were they doing at 26? And me seeing how successful they are now might have thought that at 26 they're probably on the right track. Like they've probably had it figured out. And to my surprise, most of them, if not all of them, were around the same stage that I was. And when you talk to them like on a deep personal level about their struggles in life at that time, at points I feel like, oh, maybe it's not that bad for me But there's a shift that has to happen. There's a shift, I feel like, in the way we go about looking to find success. But I think we should also talk about the way we actually chase that success. And what I mean by that is something that I struggled with was separating my faith from my job. And I always had them separate. Like if I'm a sales job, there's nothing faith I couldn't justify how selling phones could get me closer to God, which is probably the most important aspect of my life. I knew that if I progressed in this job, I will probably be successful. But that doesn't scratch the itch that I have for getting closer to God through my work. Like I hated the idea that I had to work like a regular job and then I had to do like everything faith related after work or when I'm at home or later. Like I didn't like the separation between the two. And this is just me personally. I'm speaking out loud here. I kind of mentioned that in the beginning. I wanted to chase a job that kind of gave me both. And maybe I couldn't rationale how selling phones could get me closer to God. Maybe you can. Maybe you can find a way where, I don't know, you can justify it and let that job give you purpose. But how I looked at it is faith is a very important part of my life. And I wanted it to be the baseline. I wanted everything that I do, I could feel purposeful and also be very successful. I kind of wanted to do this integration between Deen and Dunya, if that makes sense. And that's why this podcast, for example, made a lot of sense for me, is I know that it can be very successful. And I know that it can grow in Dunya terms to something that is very big. But it also scratches that purpose itch, and that all the messages that I receive from people that are watching, a lot of you listening find a lot of value in the guest stories. And whether it's in your careers or it's with your family and siblings and parents, or whether it's your relationship with God, when you guys send messages and tell me the changes that you've done through these conversations, it makes me want to continue to do this more, because this is not just about this podcast being successful. It's also about us as a whole community becoming stronger, becoming more mature, and healing those wounds that we've had for such a long time. And that was one of the main purposes of this podcast. Is I loved seeing our people be very independent and very strong and very emotionally intelligent and aware. And I wanted to have these conversations. So even if each episode just changes one person, or if each episode only makes one person think or contemplate their life, and hopefully, inshallah, change it for the better, then that's the whole point. And that's just how I personally rationaled the podcast. Another clear example I can think of people who were very successful and they wanted to chase the success of this world, but also didn't want to forget about the next world, is the founders of Palestine Drinks. And when I heard about this company, it amazed me that there's a product where 100% of the proceeds go to Palestine. Like, what kind of business model is that? Like, how are they making money? Then I learned that actually the founders were very successful. Actually, they didn't need the money. They didn't need to make this company, but they were working on solutions to problems that we have, and they wanted to create this product, this company, for their afterlife, while also changing this world. So they created this alternative to the mainstream soda and drinks that we all consume. And they said, on top of that, 100% of the proceeds are going to go to Palestine. And that's a very attractive idea. Like, you have to have a lot of respect for those types of people, because not everyone does that. And they definitely didn't need to do that. But that's kind of an example of, if you are making a lot of money and maybe your job is like boring and it's not that purposeful, there are other ways to feel purposeful during your job and working. And this is a great example of how you can. And now if you take this example and you apply it to your own life and you apply it to your own job, and let's say you're at this point where you're really looking for something to do, I always felt like taking this approach makes you feel very content. I feel very content personally doing this. I don't get bored of it. It's very entertaining. It's very, again, I'm going to use the word purposeful. It's very heartwarming, you know, when you're kind of doing both at the same time, all the time. Like prepping for episodes makes me think about my faith, because I'm like, okay, from this guest, how can I extract the most value for this specific niche part of my audience? And another guest will make me think about it in a completely different way. And I'm just always in this state of mind of what's the most value / help that can come out of this. I think a big part of our issues in general is the way we look at Islam and our faith. We look at it as a limiting factor. We look at it as it's this thing that limits us. And I'll go back and reference how I started this episode with working for this world as if you're going to live forever. That means it's limitless, the opportunities that it gave you there, just that sentence. But there's a caveat to that. And it's also working for your hereafter as if you will pass away tomorrow. So it's this balancing act where I grew up understanding that Islam is this limiting thing, that you just can't do this, can't do that, can't do that. And that kind of makes you feel like, I really can't do anything then, right? But growing up and looking into this stuff more, it actually turns out that it's not. What the message that I didn't understand, or maybe the people that were telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that, maybe didn't explain well, was that Islam is an operating system. It's the base. So everything you want to do in life, you just look at your operating system, and it just helps you navigate. And we're not going to navigate perfectly every single time, but the whole point is to try your best and keep that in mind. Like, I want to operate this way. I want to operate with faith in mind. So in that way, wherever you go, if you have that operating system, you should be fine. And you should feel this calmness from the inside. You know, one thing I think puts us at a big disadvantage when it comes to like how we look at our lives is that we think of too many things at the same time. So you think about your relationships, and you think about your job, and then you think about your faith, and you think about your health. And if you don't have it figured out, you're going to be like, man, I haven't been eating well, I haven't been going to the gym, it's been terrible. Then at the same time, you'll be like, and I'm really not doing good at my work, and I'm not happy with my job, and I'm not getting paid well, and I have these problems with my mom, and I have problems with my partner, and I haven't been praying well, and I'm skipping prayers, or I haven't read Quran in a while. These things are going to suffocate you. And actually, a good friend of mine and a former guest on the podcast, Fuad Bazze, I saw him not too long ago, and he had this thing where you score yourself out of 10 in those categories. Faith, family, fitness, and finance is what he said. Yes, faith, family, fitness, and finance. And you score them out of 10. Every 90 days, I might be butchering this. I'll have to double check with him after. But every, call it a month, like set a time frame and rate these, like be like, my fitness right now is a 3 out of 10. My family, the relationship with your family is maybe a 6 out of 10. Your finances are a 6 out of 10. And your faith is a 7 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. And start working on them like that, and understand that after this certain amount of time, I have to reevaluate myself, and I have to have gotten better in these 4 categories. And that'll give you, it kind of makes it less underwhelming because you're putting simple numbers to it and you can work on them intentionally without, like, I feel like when you put pen on paper and you think about these things one by one and what are like the smallest things that you can do that can help you get to those goals, it humanizes it in a way where it doesn't feel like you have to be a superhuman to get all this stuff done. And another thing I would like to mention is don't sweat yourself too much on results. Sometimes, from what I've been seeing, hard work doesn't always equal the results that you're looking for. And so it's weird because in the long term, all the hard work is going to pay off. But in the very short term, like your hard work on this one task isn't always going to pay off. And you have to be okay with that. You're going to have to be okay with that rejection. And I'll give you an example from my experience with the podcast is I've been interviewing people for about 2 years now. Next month in June, it would be 2 years since I've officially started interviewing people and posting episodes. But along those 2 years, there has been a lot of episodes, and some of them, especially at the beginning when they would do very bad, it would kill me on the inside because I put so much work into it. Like if I edit each episode and it takes me over 20 hours to do, and I post the episode and post the trailer, and I'm excited because I think the conversation's amazing and everyone's going to love it, and then it actually gets very little traction and it doesn't perform well, it would hurt me a lot. I'm like, man, like I worked on this. But at the same time, if it did perform well, I would be on this high. And I knew that in this game, it's very hard to predict which episodes were going to perform very well and which one were going to perform poorly. And I knew in saying that, I knew also that my work ethic towards these episodes shouldn't change because there's no way I can dictate the results. The only thing that I can dictate is that this episode come out the best as it can for the people that are going to watch it. But for me to pick and choose which episodes to put all my effort in would not be a winning formula. So I learned to detach emotion from the results of the episode. So rather than posting the episode and checking the YouTube stats every 15 minutes and checking Instagram and checking TikTok and checking all the like Spotify and Apple, I post the episode and I put my phone on the side and I act and react the exact same way regardless of how the episode performs. Because if the end goal for me was to produce a very high value, worthwhile episode for the person listening, even if there are 100 people that are going to listen, even if it's 50 people that are going to listen only, did these 50 people think this episode was worth their time? I want the answer to always be yes. Even if it's 10,000 people, even if it's 100,000 people, even if it's 1 million people, was it worth their time? The answer shouldn't change if it's 10 people or 1 million people. And now I post episodes and I put my phone on the side. And when the episodes do well and someone comes and tells me, oh my God, the episode went well, I'll be like, yeah, alhamdulillah, it did pretty good. And then when the episode doesn't do well and someone says, man, the episode didn't really hit, I'm like, yeah, alhamdulillah, it's still very good. And because I have seen the long term of that. I've seen that in these 2 years, there's been ups and downs, but there's always growth. Even when you're at those downs, there's always growth. And if I'm playing this in a 10-year game, it's going to be the same as well. So why stress the little things? Even if they take a lot of work, and even if I stayed up all night working on the episodes and they didn't perform well, you just have to move on to the next one. I like to look at it as at least I got the job done. And I think that's really where it shifted for me, where if you're familiar with the episodes and if you have watched these episodes, I put the number of the episode in the beginning. One of the motivating factors that I have is not, okay, how many views did this get? How many engagement did it get? My motivation is add that number by 1. That's all I want. This week, I only want it to change from 94 to 95. I want it changed from 70 to 71. If I can get it at 71, I'm happy. If I can't get it to 71, that's where I feel like I failed. I couldn't get the job done. But as long as I got the episode from 70 to 71, I would be satisfied. And I started chasing that that I can control rather than everything else that's out of my control. So now if I want to look back at the things that I've said in this episode so far, and we kind of want to reverse engineer our lives, let's go back to the first point we talked about, and that's how much we're consumed by our phones and how our phones are giving us this false perception of life. And I actually found this, I found this study that says that we check our phones every 6.5 minutes on average, 144 times a day. That's 144 times that you're likely to feed into this perception of this fake perception of life. 144 times a day, that's the likelihood every single day. I think it starts with cutting off those distractions a little bit, not giving them the time of day. So when you look at the phone 144 times a day, you're a consumer. But when you're working on yourself, you're being productive outside of the realm of this phone, you're being a creator. And you should be more of a creator than a consumer. And that's a good metric to have. And by the way, this is a big part of the reason why I chose to get rid of my smartwatch and I replaced it with a health tracker, Whoop. I found myself, I'm on my phone all the time. Every buzz, every notification on my wrist, I have to go check my phone. Okay. And the thing is, when you go to check your phone, you're never just checking what you got. You're never just replying to that text. You reply to the text, you go to Instagram, you go to TikTok, and then you find yourself 30 minutes later like, oh, wait, what was I doing here again? And I saw that happening too many times. And it still happens now, but I kind of felt like I cut back when I got rid of my smartwatch. So we have to tackle these distractions head on. And we have to understand that we're not as down as we think we are. You're still at the beginning of the game. You're not even down on points yet. You're right there in the fight and you still have a long way to go. We can be very hard on ourselves, and maybe sometimes it's okay to be a little harder on yourself and to look yourself in the mirror and say, I want to be better. The habits and what I'm doing right now isn't where I want to be at. That's completely fine and you should do that. But cut yourself some slack. If you are working hard and you're just not seeing the results yet, don't let that demotivate you. Rather, find other ways to feel better about yourself. That could be through your relationships, through your friends. And also never forget how important faith is in all of this. God tells us that he's closer to us than our jugular vein. That isn't just something that is said. We have to actually believe that God is close and he sees and he listens. And he knows your intentions. If your intentions are pure and you're working really hard, God will reward that. I truly believe that. I hope I was able to get that point across this episode. I hope you guys found this episode helpful. I'm in this struggle with you guys. It's just me sharing my thoughts and the stuff that I went through, really. Like I sat down and I said, what were like the biggest obstacles that I had when I was trying to build this? And I'm still building it, by the way. I always say that I haven't even scratched the surface. Like everything that you see, I still feel like I'm at level 0 here. I stopped and thought, what were the biggest obstacles? And I found that the biggest obstacles were actually my mentality and the way I was looking at things. I was just looking at things wrong. And there's actually a lot of results. I just had to be intentional and trying to look for them. Maybe I found myself chasing results that weren't normal. You have to understand that this stuff is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of work. You have to be willing to do that. And that's where I kind of came up with the idea to talk about these things. I hope you guys found value in it. And I know I've been getting a lot of DMs and messages and comments about doing solo episodes more. So if you guys want more solo episodes, I can definitely work on them. Let me know what you guys think. If you've gone through something similar, please share, because I want this to kind of be a space where we can all learn from each other. Thank you guys again. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Monday. Thank you.